Alright, so I am here on the test server, and yeah, this is a new mech, as you might have noticed. This is not the one that you were probably expecting, though, because that mech that they teased in the last devlog, where it was like a healer beam type mech, so this isn't it. You can see it deploys like a drone thing over at the enemy, and it deals a little bit of damage. It just follows them around, and that's basically it. It is very interesting in some ways, but in other ways, you know, if I'm being honest, for the most part, it seems like an afterthought. It seems like a very rushed mech. The classic default paint is what I'm using right now, and it looks atrocious. But I think it's safe to say that this is not the mech that they planned to release. It's probably why it's taken so long for them to release a mech, too, because it's been 12 to 13 weeks since they released a mech, which is longer than I think it's ever been. Let me see if I can deploy the drone on him. You see it kind of hovering above him a little bit? Yeah, he's here right there. His health bar is kind of getting in the way, but you might have saw it for a second. It just kind of beams down a little bit of damage. It's nothing particularly special, to be honest. And, yeah, so what they have told me, I do have this information anyway, what they have told me is that they're still working on the other mech, the beam healer, where the ability is going to, like, heal allies and damage enemies at the same time. And they're still working on that. I would assume that there's some kind of complications that came up, but yeah, apparently we're left with this, which, I mean, I don't hate it. There's actually a lot of very interesting facts about this ability that we'll get into a little bit later. But in general, I think the design looks rushed. The ability itself feels kind of rushed and like it was just a thing that they kind of just threw out there. And I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I mean, I'm kind of glad to have a new mech because it's been a while and it's just kind of nice to see some new stuff. But it's very interesting. Let's get this kill shot. You can see the little drone thing hovering above. It does a sort of decent amount of damage, but then again, it's the test server against bots. How much damage am I really doing, right? These bots are probably like rank 4, rank 5. Some of them have mods, so some of them are rank 6 anyway. Hi, please don't. You can see the lock-on time is very long, too. Like, the ability doesn't seem to do much, and if that was your assumption, then you're absolutely correct. I agree with you. It doesn't really do much. But for an ability that doesn't really do a whole lot, the lock-on time is excruciating. Look at that. Oh, nice. I got I got the Blockhorn kill with the thing. Yeah, so Bunny Rabbit Mech, that's where we're at right now. There is also a new weapon, Continuum, which I'll be covering in a separate video. It's a very interesting weapon. I actually think it's going to be pretty good. But getting back into this is Volti. And the ability is as follows. Locks on and teleports a drone to the target. The drone projects a damaging zone and applies shock, which is essentially the same as not applying a status effect. The more enemies in the damage zone, the shorter the ability duration. Damage doesn't bypass shields. They essentially created a damage ability that, once again, you have to lock onto an enemy, which just inadvertently buffs Surge and Eclipse even more. Just to get that out there, of course, Surge and Eclipse both counter it, because why wouldn't they? But then there's a couple other things I think are stupid. For one thing, they give the ability a damage radius, but then they specifically nerf the ability when you use the radius. So if there's multiple enemies inside the radius at the same time, then the ability doesn't last for as long and you don't deal as much damage. Which is like, why is that the case? I don't know. Just don't give it a radius at that point, I feel like, but whatever. It's an interesting mechanic, though. I mean, I'm all for interesting mechanics. It just seems self-defeating, really. But in terms of the stats, the HP is not great. 207,000 at max. That's comparable to, like, Hemlock HP, which is not great. Maximum energy of 32, so it is a heavy mech. The speed is not terrible, 21 kph. I believe it's the same as Scorpius. Ability cooldown 12 seconds, kinda long. Ability duration 6 seconds, kinda short. Damage per tick 10,000, which is rather respectable. The tick rate is 0.7 seconds. But then on top of that, there's ability activation range and then thunderstorm range. And essentially what that is it's the same thing as Parasite, where if you get too far away from the source, then it automatically deactivates the ability, and basically just a counter is just to run away from it. Which is like, sure, that's fine for Parasite because the ability is like kind of like extremely game-changing potentially. But for this thing, it's like it's so weak. It takes so long to lock onto enemies. And on top of that, the only thing you have to do is literally just run the opposite direction, and it'll just immediately stop damaging you. It's literally one dash away. Like if you're a dash mech, it's just one dash and you're immediately out of range. It's ridiculous. But there is a range implant, which increases it by 30%. But there's quite a few things that I find very interesting about the ability. First off, your lock-on time is shorter if you're closer to the enemy, which, I mean, this is clearly not a close quarters mech, so it's not that helpful. But it's interesting. I like interesting mechanics. But another thing that's interesting is actually the implants. The amount of damage that you deal with your ability is tied to 3 things: the base damage, the tick rate, and the ability duration. There's an implant for all 3 of those things. So you can increase the damage by 30%, you can increase the tick rate by 30%, and you can increase the duration by 30%. And what you're left with is actually a very respectable total damage per ability. It's not by itself going to be able to kill anything, because, I mean, obviously, at this point, especially with mods, everything just has, like, way too much HP. But a few things I really like about the ability is that, first off, the damage does not count as special damage, so it does not get absorbed by Galvanic Hull, thank God. But on top of that, it does specifically say it doesn't bypass shields. However, what it does do is it fires from the top. The damage comes from the drone, which is above you, so it will absolutely bypass a perimeter, or a blockade, or any mod, except for canopy. So the only way to actually block it with a shield is with a full skin shield like Seeker or Juggernaut, as well as a canopy mod. And canopy mods just in general are a bit weaker than, let's say, perimeter mods. And so that's actually kind of nice. Some other facts about the ability: you can increase the damage by applying the weakened status effect. Here you can see the damage rate with the increased tick rate and also the damage implant, just to kind of give you a better frame of reference. But in contrary to weaken, you cannot increase the damage with Orion Hunter's Mark. I would assume the same applies to Brick House boosts, etc., because those are specifically weapon boosts. They shouldn't be increasing ability damage, but I have not tried it. If you backtrack with a Redeemer, the drone actually will follow you, and it will kill you if it's able. It also appears to follow a Deathwalker after it gets resurrected, but of course, no, the drone disappears as soon as the resurrection fully completes, so no, this is not a valid counter to Deathwalker. However, you can kill a Seeker with it. It will teleport back with the Seeker, and will continue to damage it until the duration is over. Same thing with like Eclipse or any other stealth mech, it'll just keep following it. Along with mods, the drone damage will also bypass shield abilities like Sentinel or even Panther, as well as Aegis. Fun fact, you can actually damage enemies through the dome with the drone radius. And an interesting thing I found in the test server, which appears to be a bug, was when I killed an enemy with the ability, it seemed to convert the unused duration time into ability cooldown reduction. And by that I mean, like, if there was 4 seconds left on the ability, then it would reduce my cooldown by 4 seconds if I killed them. But I only got that to happen one time, so I assume it's a bug and not a hidden feature. Very sad. Thank God there's a legendary skin. It looks, not great, but at least it's better than the default paint. Anyway, I have this with Oracle because something that kind of occurred to me is that there's really no mech except for Seeker that can take full advantage of Oracle's perk, which is to be able to spot people behind cover at all times. Something like a Scorpius or a Solus or a Hemlock or any of those things, most of the time they can't actually reach the enemy with the ability. And in terms of Seeker, yeah, you could use a Seeker and keep teleporting to people, but Oracle doesn't do a whole lot of damage, which means that you tank your damage significantly, and then teleporting onto them with pretty low damage output is not likely going to end well for you. But Volti can take full advantage of the reveal status effect and just keep spam beaming people from the sky with the drone thing. And so that's kind of cool. But in general, the weapons that seem to do the best on this mech are passive guided weapons, as you might expect. I personally found Gemini to do very, very well against the test server bots anyway. And Strike Rocket was also pretty good. But yeah, I'll mess around with this a bit more on the live server. More than likely, you'll end up seeing a Volti stream where I'll max it out and use it against, hopefully, actual players. In general, I think this is not a great mech. I don't think it's going to be meta, absolutely not meta. But I also don't necessarily think it's going to be terrible. It's better than some, worse than others, but out of all the mechs that they've released rather recently, it's definitely one of the worst ones, so there's that to be said. Anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think would do well on this mech, or what situations you think this would be an ideal mech for. Otherwise, that will be it for me. Appreciate y'all. Take care.